Welcome to SoFi Stadium for the NewOrleans.Football pregame show presented by Matt Bowers. Make sure you check out Matt at his state-of-the-art dealership on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. They got the Ford store there. Check it out. Get yourself a nice new car, the best prices, best customer care. And if you aren't looking for a Ford, Matt has every other type of car. Check him out at one of his dealerships throughout the greater New Orleans region. I'm Nick Underhill. He's Mike Triplett. We're here at SoFi Stadium. Today's game between the Saints and the Chargers. Kind of low-key, maybe a little bit of a kind of have to win, maybe not a must win, but they're nearing up on that at this point. I don't think they can afford to lose these next two games back-to-back. Chargers and Panthers getting this one today resets their season a little bit and will take a lot of pressure off.
I mean, what are we talking about? Must win? I think to win the division and make the playoffs, they have to go 8-2. So pretty much every game is a must win. So yes, in that sense, but it seems silly to use the term must win with a team that is like in second to last place in the NFL right now. I mean, it becomes a useless term at a certain point. This is the only way to resurrect the season in my mind. I think it's too late to resurrect the season after this week, don't you?
No, I don't think that at all. I mean, the schedule gets soft. You get your starters back. You could go on a run. I think it's being a little overdone to say it has to be this week.
All right.
They could lose this week and then win 3 in a row or something. This isn't the do or die game in and of itself. I think the next two
week
are
would be. Next week would be.
I think if you lose this one, then you're kind of on. That's my point. I think you're kind of on life support after this one. You're on life support if you lose this one, and then next week it's like, are you pulling the plug or not? Is a decision.
If you lose to Carolina, I'll tell you the answer. It's morbid.
It's highly important, but I think even on a beyond the playoff sense, I think just in terms of your team having a shot of doing anything, of having the same coaching staff next year, you can't lose the next two games. You know, in fairness to where they're at right now, I'm not necessarily viewing this as a must-win game for job security. Realistically, like when your starting quarterback isn't playing, like you
playoffs is one conversation, job security is another.
When your starting quarterback isn't playing, you do have some grace. As much as people don't want to have that conversation or believe it, I mean, you know. The high-priced backups in Cleveland right now. So, like, they're next week I think is more on that front than this week. But as far as, like, do you have a shot at making the playoffs, you got to win this week. And then if you go into the bye, like, that's why I don't think they're dead if they lose this one. If you go into the bye a game away from 500, I think you still have a chance of doing something at that point. So,
in theory, 3 out of 4, no matter how they come, saves your season. So technically this isn't a must-win. Here's the other thing, though. Nobody's into moral victories, but they need to look like I've said this a couple times this week. They need to at least, if they lose, it needs to look like the Atlanta or Philly game. Like, hey, they're two equally matched NFL teams. There was a lot of spirit in practice this week. Everybody came back but Derek Carr pretty much and Eric McCoy. Both of them should be back within a matter of a couple weeks. But Taysom came back and Cesar Ruiz came back and Pete Werner came back and Chris Olave came back and spirits were uplifted and Alvin got his contract extension and energy was high. If this game looks anything like the Broncos game and the Buccaneers game, that probably all goes away too. So at the very least, you need to be like, all right, those 3 games that happened during the mad injury rush, those were isolated. They need to at least look like the same team we saw in September.
And I don't think they will. I mean, look, you don't have your starting quarterback, and I think that really matters. Like I know that's kind of the idea that Derek Carr doesn't matter. Like he does matter, and I don't think you can look like that team without him, but I do want to see a team that's rounding into shape at least today, that you are protecting a little bit better, you can run the ball a little bit better, that your offensive lineman coming back makes a difference, that you're doing something with your tackling that's a little bit better. That did take a step in the right direction last week, but not enough.
Yeah.
Like your run defense looks to look like it can hold the line a little bit. There's a lot of stuff that we need to see. And just to clarify the first point, there's this like weird thing on Twitter where if you say something, well, this is still possible. They think you're saying that will happen. I'm just saying that the season is not. I'm not declaring it dead if they lose today. That doesn't mean I think they're going to make the playoffs. Right. It's just like I got to see 2 steps before I'm pulling the plug, and one would kind of go toward it a little bit.
And look, you said defense at the end of that list. My point about what you have to look like is probably more of a defensive point. We realize there's sorting things out on offense. They have Spencer Rattler. A lot of these guys are just coming back for the first time. The defense is the unit that needs to prove that those last 3 weeks were some kind of a weird anomaly, because that was disturbing. We're not talking about anything if the defense can't get back to being what it's supposed to be.
It's the biggest thing this week, and you get Pete Werner back. Maybe that helps a little bit. I don't think, you want to talk about excuses. Like, I don't think being without one linebacker is a legitimate excuse for how bad it looked. I think you have to make that look a lot better. not having Paulson Adebo is going to be a hit on that. And look, I think moving Alante Taylor out of the slot is going to be a hit.
He'll be in the slot on every
well, first and second, you know what I mean? But, you're right. But, kind of just taking Adebo off the field, I don't think that helps your run defense, overall. I like the setup there. I think Adebo tackles all right. You get
any change hurts, of course.
Yes, we need to see what Kool-Aid can do. That's something. Being down some safeties, I don't know how to grade that one quite yet. I don't know if being down Abram helps or hurts you. I don't know if Ugo's a benefit or a liability. He's going to see some snaps today. Abram's tackling was one of the spotty spots, so maybe it is an improvement, but it is possible to be worse than it was a week ago. So that's something that we're going to have to kind of find out. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about him. Watching practice this week, I felt better seeing a lot of bodies back. I think Taysom Hill being back is going to make a big difference. It kind of just gives you that little bit of pause in the backfield. And when you're doing good play action and Taysom's out there, people are kind of watching it a little more, and you almost end up blocking people without actually having to put hands on them when they're taking that extra beat, and everything becomes a little bit more believable with him. So that helps for Rattler. So let's just kind of go into that. What do you expect to see from Rattler today with some extra guys around him, some better protection? Actually, I think he threw one pass with wide receiver one on the field. Getting Olave back helps a lot.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see from him?
I still expect him to be I don't know why I keep comparing him to Will Levis over and over again, but that level of player, a rookie with some high points that get people excited and some low points because he's a rookie and he's not a superstar rookie yet. But I expect a much more fair evaluation of him because I just think last week was an atrocity. I mean, he never had 1 second to throw in the pocket. If he stood in the pocket, the play was dead, and the only thing was don't turn it over. He had to roll out to do everything. I think now we'll get a fair evaluation of him, and I expect that evaluation to be like a rookie. You know what I mean? Like some good, some bad, but better than last week when every offensive possession was just 3 plays later it's going back to the defense.
Yeah, for me, the protection will help, but I don't think it was all protection.
Right.
I think he's done a very, I think my biggest criticism of him is that he doesn't see the blitz as well as he should. And there's times you got to do stuff to protect yourself. You got to know, okay, there's numbers over here, so now this is hot, and I got to get to my hot read. And he doesn't do that, and that's something he needs to show himself. Cesar Ruiz isn't going to save him from that. He has to save himself from some of those things. Protection isn't good enough, but those are things you do expect to see from a rookie from time to time, and those are things that you can improve, and your recognition of it has to improve. So I don't know if it's fair to expect it by week 3 for that to be perfect, but it needs to be a little bit better than it was last week. I mean, some of that stuff, going back 2 weeks ago, some of those hits, it's just free runners coming at him, and he doesn't see where it's coming from. And, that is something that if he's going to be a viable quarterback in the NFL, you do have to see that stuff a little bit better. So I'm not expecting a 10 out of 10 on it, but if he was at a 3, I'd like to see it to get to a 4 or a 5 this week.
It's funny. We talked about this coming into the stadium. There's a lot of good things about the Saints today. All the guys are coming back are going to help so much. They're going to be a lot more closer to what the Saints are supposed to be than they have been the last 2 weeks. And the Chargers haven't been blowing anyone away. Every one of their scores feels like 20-16. They just lost to the Arizona Cardinals coming here on a short week. They don't seem like a big, bad, unbeatable team. So in my mind, I was thinking, if I squint, I could see a path to the Saints keeping this game close, maybe winning this game. And then we walk in and we see a big poster of Justin Herbert. And you're like, oh, yeah, they have a great quarterback. And then we walk in and we see all these posters of Jim Harbaugh. And I'm like, oh, yeah, they have a great coach. And it's like so many other people. We do nuance, we do subtlety, we do everything on the roster. So many people look at the league and they base things on coach and quarterback. This is Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert against Dennis Allen and Spencer Rattler. And that feels like a lot to overcome.
Yeah, it's funny. Justin Herbert's kind of had a weird career arc.
Yeah.
He was so overhyped to the point that he was probably the most overrated quarterback of the last 15 years over this last little stretch. But now it's kind of swung to the other way where he's almost not mentioned at all, and they're emphasizing the run, and he's probably in a perfect role for him. It isn't too much of him, and he's just kind of forgotten about a little bit. But he's still a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and you get in the 3rd and long, that's the guy you want throwing the ball for you. A wide receiver today is going to kind of be interesting for the Saints. Obviously, Chris Olave is back. need somebody else to kind of step up in that wide receiver 2 role with Rashid out. Bob Means will be out there. Mason Tipton will be out there. They signed Valdez-Scantling. I'm kind of expecting him to be inactive this week.
They also promoted Equinemius St. Brown, so it might be the same as last week.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play. Who do you think is going to end up being the guy that's more in the Shaheed role? Is it Tipton or is it Bub?
Well, I think Tipton would be more in the Shaheed role. I think he'll be the guy who runs the fly routes, shot plays.
Well, a lot of times they're only in 2, so like there is only one one
but
role.
The actual balls Shaheed has caught this season.
I don't think those go to him.
But you don't think Tipton is the guy who runs the fly route? I mean,
I don't think you're as willing to arch back and throw when you got 2 guys kind of like side by side like we are. Like I think to make those throws to Mason Tipton, he actually has to be open. You aren't kind of like, well, Shaheed's going to win that by a step. Although, like
I think to answer your question, I think Means is more reliable. Means will catch more passes. We've already seen a little bit of a rapport between Rattler and Means. I think, but if there's a shot play to be had, I think it's more like Olave and Tipton. I'm not necessarily predicting shot play success.
It's kind of hard to calculate too, because I think the way Derek reads the field is probably a little bit different too. Like you see a safety look and it's like, all right, I'm going to give Shaheed a chance.
Yeah.
I don't. Does Spencer make the same decision as quickly or whatever, or is it just kind of? I don't know how to calculate it. But if I were having to pick one for my fantasy team, I'm probably going Bub today. Like Tipton could make one play that kind of makes you say, damn it, I wish I played him. Yeah. But I think Bub's probably the guy that ends up with more receptions on that
we've
one.
also seen, whether it's a rapport with Rattler or the way Kubiak's been calling the games with Rattler in the game, we've been seeing the tight ends kind of reemerge a little bit. I mean, Jawan Johnson and Foster Moreau might both rank ahead of both those receivers we're talking about.
The other piece of news that happened, Jordan Mims got cut yesterday, which is, I think, a little bit of a vote of confidence for Kendre Miller.
Sure. How can you not look at it that way?
Jordan probably ends up coming back, I would guess, maybe practice squad, or maybe they get him back on the 53 next week or whatever. I don't think he's going to be gone forever, but how many carries do you think Kendre gets today? What would you set?
that depends on.
What would you set the line at?
That depends on game script. I mean, percentage of carries, I think for every 10 Alvin gets, Kendre gets 5. But
that'd be a great number.
Is that the total? Is there only 17 carries in this whole game? Quite possibly.
What would you set the number at? The over under?
So I'm going to keep it at 6 or 7. I mean, I just don't see them running the ball 25 times in this game.
If they can, they have a chance to win it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what has to happen for them to have a shot to win this game, I think. I think they're going to try to pound it, though. I think they got away from it a little bit. Obviously, they trailed in games, and then I just think, obviously, it isn't working. So, there were things that we were seeing earlier in the season when they were able to block. It would be 3rd and 4, and they'd be like, we're going to hand this off and take a chance at it. They didn't do that as much. I'll take the over on that just slightly. He got 6 last week, a bunch of them in garbage time. I think they want to get him the ball. I think they need to get him the ball. I think it would help a lot. Like, if you can get both those guys going, there is a dynamic duo to be found.
I also wouldn't mind seeing Taysom get 7 carries. So that's another thing that can lower that
he's going to cut into it as well. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, he might not. Taysom's back.
Yeah.
How many carries do you expect Taysom to get?
One more than Kendre.
One more than Kendre? All right.
So I'll put it at, I expect 6 for Taysom and 5 for Kendre.
It's unlikely they go. This is a question from our chat. It's unlikely the Saints go 8-2 down the stretch.
Yes, I agree.
But presuming the defense bounces, definitely agree with that. But presuming the defense bounces back and the starting QB and center return, do you think your preseason record predictions are still feasible?
Mine was 8-9, and when we were saying must-win game, what could happen, outlook of the season, 8-9 is not impossible. So what are they now? 2-5. If you win 3 out of the next 4 and you go into the bye week at 5-6, is that what we're talking about? 5-6, then I'd predict them to go 8-9. If you go into the bye week at 4-7, it gets a lot harder. But could they finish 4-2 after the bye when healthy, even if nothing means anything and it's just what we've seen each of the last 2 years on repeat? 8-9 is very feasible. I mean, it's an easy schedule, and they'll eventually be healthy. They're going to, after Carolina next week, first of all, Carolina should be a free pass. Nothing's a free pass for this team. Then you're home for the next 4 weeks. Home, bye, home. Like, this is a team that will get a chance to lick its wounds.
If they win 8 games, nobody's getting fired. No, that you aren't firing the staff if they win 8 games.
I think if they go from 2-5 to 7-10, no one's getting fired.
I would agree with that too. I think it has to be kind of bad.
Yeah.
Really, it really does. I said 9. I mean, right now it's not feasible until we see something.
Yeah.
Well,
this game brings 9 into play.
We'll revisit it. At some point. Right now, today's we stand here. 9 is not.
Yeah.
9 is not feasible. 8 doesn't even really. 8 feels tough, but 8 feels feasible. Like if you said you have to, okay, maybe 8.
You'd have to go 6 and 4.
Yeah, I can see that. Right now, 9 feels a bridge too far. Like you'd really have to get on a run.
Yep.
And we just haven't seen the consistency at any point over 3 years to kind of think that that's going to happen. So you got to change the narrative. So yeah, I'm definitely willing to change that take if I see something, but they're not a team that deserves benefit of doubt right now on anything. Let me see what other questions we got in here. How does the team feel about Isaiah Foskey? I would imagine they don't feel great about that pick right now. He's making no contributions on defense. That's not something that I think anybody's celebrating. I don't think anybody's looking at it, and you can't be looking at it and thinking he's going to be an answer at some point, right?
No,
There's no reason to even think that he's even. Yeah, I mean,
he's disappeared. He's disappeared. I mean, he had a good summer, and that hasn't amounted to any production whatsoever.
This is an interesting point, though. The question goes on to say the coaches have been harsh on Kendre. What about Foskey? It is kind of interesting that you don't hear those harsh tones. I mean, I guess maybe the difference is that they feel like Kendre should find a way to be on the field.
Yeah,
and
that's where they've been
it's not
harsh.
necessarily a performance-based thing. It's kind of a, hey, you should be doing what you got to do to be on the field is kind of how I take that.
Dennis Allen's summer comments on Foskey were similar to his summer comments on A.T. Perry, which is not a good sign.
Next one's kind of a statement, but we'll go over it. I'm not confident with the return of Ruiz and Patrick as most seem to be. Saints still have McGovern at center, and Penning and Fuaga haven't been great. Tell me on how adding Ruiz and Patrick back will be enough to turn this offensive line around. Will it be enough to turn it around? I don't know how you define or turn it around. I would say, I think Eric McCoy's a huge piece of that.
Yes.
For it to be where it needs to be, McCoy has to be out there. Turning it around, it should be better. The thing, though, is I think the perception of people watching the game today, and I'm not saying anything slick here, like just watching it and not like actually studying it or seeing where the pressure's coming from or understanding hey, this guy's on the quarterback and not the line. Mm-hmm. I think the people's perception of how the line performs today is going to be on how Rattler handles the blitz and how he reads it. And that'll get thrown on if he's bad at it, they're going to say the line still stinks and it was all on them. So I think really a lot of it's going to be about how the quarterback protects himself.
Yeah, look. Let's go. I'm saying these again. Philadelphia game, Atlanta game. The offensive line was not great in either of those games, but they found tricks and ways to scheme around it. Derek Carr was throwing the ball in 2 seconds. They were sending extra chippers. They were sending extra blockers. They were doing quick throws and everything like that. Now you can do those things again because you have a functional line. The line we saw last week was you should cancel the game. It was like we were talking about how it felt like the Ian Book COVID game. Like,
yeah,
you can get back to being the 24th best line in the NFL instead of the 8th best line in college football, which is what they were last week.
It's funny the perception of how things are like during the season versus like the off season. The whole off season, like our conversations were, and I lump us in here because our reaction is to what we're seeing right now. It was. Well, yeah, this team isn't worth a high-priced backup quarterback, and if the quarterback goes out, the season's probably cooked anyhow, so why spend the money on it? They don't have enough depth, enough players. Yeah. And it was never like, well, if that happens, like, we're going to have conversations about burning it down, and then you see it, and you're like, should they? Like, it's just kind of funny how good players matter during the offseason, and then during the season, like, we all feel like they should find a way to overcome this, and maybe sometimes that's a little unfair. Cooper said, at this game, all the way from Pennsylvania, I found you guys on the field from Mike's bright shirt.
Thank you. Hey, I wore it for L.A., man. I dressed for L.A.
Someone said, I have Kendre and Taysom in fantasy. Should I start one of them?
Boy, it'd be hard to start Kendre Miller in fantasy. I would say keep Kendre Miller on your bench, and if he has a breakout game, you'll be really excited that you now have an asset going forward. But to count on them being able to have 3 different runners all have some success today is asking a whole lot from a team that I think the Saints would have to have a lead for you to want to be playing their backup running back in fantasy.
The Saints inactive today are Derek Carr, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Cedric Wilson Jr., Jalen Ford, the rookie linebacker, Nick Saldiveri, offensive lineman, tight end, Dallin Holker, and rookie defensive tackle Christian Boyd. Obviously, Derek Carr is dealing with the oblique injury. Cedric Wilson suffered a hip injury in practice this week, so that took him out of action. And Nick Saldivari has the shoulder. So you want to say it's a good injury report because the numbers have kind of come down and they're actually making healthy guys inactive. So that's a turn in the right direction. At the same time, your starting quarterback is still out.
And your center, who might be the third best player on the whole team.
Yeah, and then, So, I mean, still kind of.
And a cornerback who might be one of the 10 best players on the team.
He feels
and a receiver who might be one of the 10 best players on the team.
Yeah.
So you're still missing 4 guys we ranked in our preseason top 10.
Yeah, so still a lot of guys out. Derek Carr, obviously a hugely massive one. Valdez-Scantling being inactive doesn't surprise me a whole lot. You know, I think it would have been, you try to force a veteran in with the rookie quarterback on a short week. It seems like that'd be kind of tough to do. The learning curve, I thought, might have gave him a chance to play this week. They might have found a package of plays with him, just given that he's coming from the same system, coming from, you know, in his background, Green Bay, they run the same offense, same verbiage, but obviously just not quite ready yet. And then I thought the Cedric Wilson injury also, too, might force you to try to find 10 plays for him or something, but it makes sense to kind of back off that until he's fully ready. You don't want a communication error in a game where you're down guys and your margin for error is really, really thin. And if he's running a curl and your quarterback's thinking out route or whatever, that possibility is possibly there on a short week. So it kind of makes sense to minimize your risk, but I would have liked to see him find a way to play. I would feel better about this game if he was out there. I still feel extremely, extremely worried about the offensive weaponry at wide receiver. It still feels like one guy and nobody else.
Of course, but you know it's a lot better than last week when they had the nobody else without the Chris Olave. But yeah, it's still not great.
Plus Taysom and 2 offensive linemen. So, yeah, that kind of we're going to see what happens today. I think the Saints desperately need to get a win. It feels like a tall task still. Really just looking to see if they can round into shape and if some of these things they were working on can get better. So we're going to have all of your coverage on the game on NewOrleans.Football. If you aren't signed up for the site, this is the last day to use the code Rattler, 20% off your first payment. We're going to have live analysis there, more thoughts, more insight, more of what we're seeing there than we'll put on Twitter. So make sure you sign up for the site. And then after the game, you will get all of our analysis of this game, our columns, our thoughts, our breakdowns. And then I have no idea how to do the math on West Coast time, but I think about 9 o'clock Central-ish, we'll be back live right from this spot on the field, breaking down the game for only members of NewOrleans.Football. So if you're signed up for the site, you will get that live, and you can watch it all day tomorrow. And then we'll put that out for the public, I don't know, around dinner time, maybe a little before dinner tomorrow afternoon. So get a head start on that. And then every show you get to get it early, get to watch it early. So make sure you are signed up for the site. Use the code Rattler, 20% off. And if you're buying a car, make sure you buy it from Matt Bowers because he's going to be at home cussing and swearing along with this thing along with you. So man of the people, buy the car from him. Check him out at his state-of-the-art dealership, Ford on Veterans Boulevard. And we'll be back talking to you guys after the game. Buy a car from
someone who's suffering along with
you. Yes. Somebody who's actually suffering with you. Do that. So, it's going to do it for the pregame show. We appreciate all you guys for watching. We'll be back on the site in a little bit, breaking it all down.